video, I want to preface it with something, and that is this. I have 209, 210 hours in Elden Ring. I am a massive Elden Rings fanboy. I've been a big fan of FromSoft for a long time. I've played all of their franchises, and I completely understand the arguments of both sides of the debate of putting an easy mode into Elden Ring. Before I move forward, I want to just state I'm not 100% for the idea of putting easy modes or simpler modes into Elden Ring. That is not my personal stance, but I can understand why that stance exists. I'm not going to sit here and use the get good terminology, which, if you are a perfectly capable person playing video games who wants to enjoy these titles, yes, you should get good. If you are a new gamer who is just experiencing FromSoft for the first time, I understand that these games are hard, but there is a sense of trial and error that you must overcome in order to enjoy these games. You need to release your stubbornness and allow the game to be more fluid. You need to be more aware of everything and hone those skills. The other side of this conversation is something that I believe in and something that I support a lot, and that is accessibility. Now, this has been thrown around, and I want to be clear that I am aware that people who are partially paralyzed, fully paralyzed, have missing fingers, etc., etc., have been able to beat Elden Ring, and that's completely fine. Like, I get it. Those people are extremely talented for what they've done and what they've accomplished, and we should all praise them. People have beaten Elden Ring on dance pads with a Guitar Hero controller. That's phenomenal. Um, but that's not everybody. And this is really where my main internal conflict occurs because this video was born from a statement I made on the podcast where I stated I would like to see more games with accessibility options. This was spawned from, I believe, Steel Rising, a game that is inspired by From Software titles that recently came out that immediately has accessibility options right on the front of that game as soon as you load it up. Now, what's super important to understand why I feel like accessibility is very different than difficulty is stemming from the fact that I did not enjoy Steel Rising as it was from the developers. I thought it was a slog of a game to play that had really poor defending, very poor attacking settings. And when I messed around with some of the accessibility options, I found that I really enjoyed it as more of a defensive or stiffer hack and slash style game. Think like Darksiders or something like that, and that kind of changed my perspective on things. But I don't want to harp too much onto Steel Rising in this regard because the conversation is about a much more powerful fan base, a much larger fan base, and that is FromSoft. If you followed me at all, you know that I support able gamers. Almost every charity stream I've done since the beginning of my channel has been for able gamers. This started a long time ago for me. One of the first big charities that I got to participate in was at the arcade I worked at, where we were able to bring Xboxes and PlayStation 3s, I believe it was, to the St. Jude's Hospital that exists in New York. And it was handed out with the Buffalo Sabres, which was super cool. And I don't know if those stayed there or if it was like a daily event or something. I don't remember. This is a long time ago. Accessibility is just one of those things that I feel like game developers should at least consider when moving forward. I am in a personal stance where I can understand that a developer might not want accessibility options or even implement them. I can see the community rallying behind making these kinds of things or being the ones to create a mod patch that is easy mode, but I don't think that's a really good option either because it's not really going to make the game more accessible. If anything, it might make the game less accessible. Um, Elden Ring it's so complicated for me because I've honed my skills since Demon Souls on the PS3. When I first started playing the FromSoft franchise, starting at Demon Souls, it took me years to get good at this franchise. I did not just get on Demon Souls and slay through it immediately. It took me a long time to beat that game. Even with my experience playing The Legend of Zelda, even with my experience as a gamer, I have stated it time and time again, I was not a gamer until way later in life. I enjoyed video games before that, but I was not a gamer until way later. So my stance, as it is right now, is I don't think it's a bad idea to ask developers to consider accessibility options. Because I don't view accessibility options as an easy mode. I don't view accessibility in any regard of diminishing to the overall difficulty of the game. Things like very, very good graphical user interfaces and having a lot of driver support and getting people involved in supporting drivers and getting drivers packed into things for different forms of controllers, different forms of peripherals, some that might require multiple USB ports in order for somebody to enjoy a game is good. Having a good graphical user interface for them to remap those controls very easily without having to really do much is a good thing in my opinion. These are the kinds of things that I perceive as accessibility. And if a person chooses to enjoy a game like Elden Ring and go through the struggles that that game provides, accessibility is not a difficulty. I should not be able to access an easy mode if the developers don't want one. But at the end of the day, allowing a broader market by allowing accessibility options is important. Now, I bring up the Steel Rising thing because obviously I was able to completely manipulate how the game played in order to play it. What actually ultimately made me stop playing it was I just had no idea where I was going. Unlike Elden Ring, it had really good landmarking. Anyways, I was able to completely change what Steel Rising was as a game. Conceptually, like to its bones, I was able to completely change how that game played. I don't think that is completely necessary for every single game. I think of things like Session, where you can completely customize that game to play how you want and be able to change your gravity and your pop and your flick. But this is typically more of changes to get different camera angles and shots. But it has been utilized by the community to also make the game more accessible by changing the control schemes to be more like Session or Skater XL, be more like Skate 3, change the gravity and things like that so it feels like a different game and play only like that. Now, Session doesn't really have a big world that needs to be explored. It doesn't have large missions and quests and things like that, but clearly there is some need in this world for accessibility options to become the norm. Not everybody likes films, not everybody reads. Some people just like to play a video game. And I've seen many people say things like, "Oh, well, the Nintendo DS doesn't have accessibility options. Oh, the PS Vita doesn't have accessibility options." And you're right. That's true. But these are niche hardware. These are specific items for people to purchase that are out and about and doing things. Xbox has hardware that has been made for accessibility, and I believe Sony is also working on, if not, it's already released accessibility stuff. And there are an entire charity organization known as Able Gamers to produce accessibility items. So I guess my argument in this has not really been too impactful into the community, but I just felt like it should be said because it seems to be one of those neglected arguments where get good is correct. That is the antithesis of this franchise. You need to hone your skills to be good at this game. You cannot just get up and beat this game as if it is nothing. Nor should you expect that from any game. Having difficulty settings in games where that is something that you want, say a Resident Evil title, where it isn't just on master difficulty at all times, is a good thing. That's a good thing because those developers wanted to do that. The fact of the matter is if Resident Evil 9 comes out tomorrow and it is a brutally hard game with no options for difficulty, that is the artistic direction of the developers. But they don't have to not have accessibility options. Having those accessibility options is more important than relinquishing your artistic intention. It is more important than most things because you're allotting people to have the ability to enjoy your game and its world. Because no matter what, even if you are a disabled person, if those accessibility options are there and they do something to work with you and they do something to make sure that your accessibility is a part of that title, you will be able to beat that game through the trials of blood, sweat, and tears, just like everybody else had to go through when they first loaded up a From Software game. I understand the argument of stating that these games need easy modes, and I completely can understand why that would be something that these developers would consider. But at the end of the day, it's not your game to dictate, nor is it the people who state get good. It's not their decision to dictate and create a walled garden for this game. It's much more advanced than just these two arguments. And I'm looking at it from a perspective of something that has personally affected my life and led me to look at things a little bit differently. As somebody who wants to do their part, and one of the core reasons why they are pushing their YouTube channel to grow is so that these charity streams can support something like Able Gamers because it is something that I believe in. And I want to see more people have the ability to play this game. I want to see everybody have the ability to beat this game. And not in a sense of make it easier, but make it accessible. I hope that kind of clarifies things and is a nice treaded middle ground for this community. It just seems like every single day I come across videos of people throwing fire and they're completely neglecting to talk about the people who are actually affected in this situation. And that isn't the normal people who just suck. That's the people who are disabled and are completely sound of mind and just can't play the game because of accessibility options. I say accessibility options is one of those things that needs to be completely normalized. Like the yellow grooved sides of your sidewalk that allow for blind people to still be able to go for a walk. It just makes sense to me. Hey, but that's just my opinion. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button, and I hope to see you in another video. Let me know what you think down below. I hope this isn't something that's too inflammatory for the communities if this reaches them at any time. But yeah, I think we could all be better people on both sides. I don't think the argument is really doing us any favors.